Sue Gray, the civil servant who investigated Partygate and went on, of course, to become Sir Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff. She's just been made a life peer as part of the Prime Minister's 30 new appointments as he attempts to swing the House of Lords towards his political leanings. And meanwhile, Lord Peter Mandelson is set to become the next UK ambassador to the United States, with a cabinet minister describing him as a really good fit for the role. Now, Lord Mandelson, who served in the cabinets of Sir Tony Blair, of course, and Gordon Brown, is poised to be the UK's next top diplomat in Washington, marking a significant appointment as Donald Trump returns, of course, to the White House on January the 20th. However, is the man who once described Donald Trump as a danger to the world and little short of a white nationalist and a racist really the right man to represent us in the United States? Well, I'm delighted to say a Christmas bonus. I'm joined by GBNews' political editor, Chris Hope, in the studio. Chris, we said farewell yesterday. Great to see you.
It was emotional. I couldn't stay away, Martin.
Same here. Tear-stained pillow. You're back today. Let's start with the peerages. Everybody complains about the peerages every year. Oh, they're stacking the upper chamber full of their own political appointments. But Sue Gray, has to be said, does in particular raise eyebrows. She departed the Starmer government under something of a cloud, and yet she's been given the top gong. Tell us more.
Yeah, Sue Gray, former Chief of Staff to the PM and former Cabinet Office second permanent secretary, has got a peerage. There's 30 Labour peers, around 6 Tory ones. Let's go through them. I think Sue Gray may have got something anyway, frankly. Her length of service in Whitehall would have got her something, I imagine. Maybe not a peerage. So, yes, I mean, she was obviously moved out after a power struggle within Number 10. Morgan McSweeney has got her job. He's much more of a political choice as Chief of Staff, and arguably some of the political missteps they took during the summer and early autumn are ending as this party gets used to being government, but also working out what messages it wants to push very hard with voters. As Wendy Alexander, she's the sister of Douglas Alexander, the Labour cabinet or Labour minister, and others too. You've got Therese Coffey on the Tory side, Rachel McLean, former Tory MPs. Oh, yeah. I thought there's 2 interesting ones there which you weren't expecting. Toby Young, he's the director of the Free Speech Union. That's interesting. He is someone who fights hard for freedom of speech. He talks a lot on GBNews. Yeah. He's a bit of a fan favourite for some of our viewers and listeners. A bit like Claire Fox, he's someone who speaks out on behalf of just all of us, really, protecting free speech against the state, and that's to be welcomed. And also Nigel Biggar, an academic who has spoken out against critics of the British Empire. So while these lists always seem to frustrate and annoy in equal measure, there are some indications there that it's not entirely a Labour-slanted list. And
I think it's fair to say hats off to Toby Young, an individual who started, of course, Free School, a Conservative, very outspoken. They tried to cancel his career on repeated times. As a consequence, he was driven to start the Free Speech Union and has championed many people who've been found themselves on the receiving end of cancel culture. And I think a lot of people will say hats off, that's well deserved.
The row is breaking out, as it always does about this peers. So Labour sources tell GBNews this hour the Tories stuffed the House of Lords, creating a serious imbalance in the chamber. This needs to be corrected, they say, to drive through the government's plan for change and deliver our mandate for the British people. They're committed to overdue programme reform and have laid legislation to remove the right of hereditary peers, around 80 of them, to sit and vote in the Lords. For the Tory side, very briefly, Andrew Griffiths, a frontbencher, says peerages should never be rewards for failure. Someone who is principled, articulate and made a contribution to multiple aspects of public life, including education and journalism and free speech, is Toby Young. So you've got the Tories welcoming Toby Young there. So as ever, there's something for everything. It's a smorgasbord. This list of the...
Everybody will always complain that the House of Lords is getting stuffed with people they don't agree with. That's an annual fixture. Let's move on.
You're waiting for your phone call, Martin. I'm sure you might have to wait a bit longer for now.
I'm available for pantomime. I don't think that's ever going to happen. But let's talk about Lord Mandelson. Mandy, as I used to call him back in the day. Now, a character shrouded in controversy, shrouded in the dark arts of spin. And this strikes me, there's the good, there's the bad and the ugly. The good, potentially, he's dallied with the idea of using Nigel Farage as some kind of bridgehead, the Trump whisperer. The bad, of course, another Labour embarrassment, archived comments dug up, calling Trump a danger to the world, little short of a white nationalist and a racist, and potentially the ugly. There are very strong links to the Jeffrey Epstein situation. So this is something which is already causing a huge huge amount of talk.
Let's go through that and then briefly. The good, yeah, I agree. I think he's a political operator. He's the first political appointment to this role in Washington, being our chief diplomat facing our closest ally in America. I think he's somebody who knows how to make things work. He knows how the wheels of power, the levers of power work in the European Union. He was a trade commissioner. He's three times, I think, held big jobs in the cabinet. He's close to Morgan McSweeney.
Yep.
He's a man you never heard of. He's vital, though, because he's the chief of staff to Keir Starmer, knows him. I think the old gang is getting back together who used to govern under Tony Blair. You've also got Jonathan Powell as a national security advisor. So I think, yes, I think he's interesting. I think if you look at who it could have been, it's not someone who's in the deep state, a former spy, for example, who was mooted. It's not someone in the civil service. It's someone who is political. And that's what Trump is. Trump's a deal maker, and he can shrug off the criticism from the past. I would forgive him that. In terms of the bad, I would forgive him the historic remarks. He hasn't been really in politics.
Well, they've all done it.
Yeah, but he wasn't,
a lot of them are called
an MP at the time. I think
point.
it's different now with people. The members, a third of the cabinet made remarks about Trump back in the day. A lot of them want to be the next government. If you want to do that, don't be worried about a guy who could be back in the White House. I think Mandelson never really thought he'd be back at the front line in this way. The opportunities come up, and it's to be welcomed, I think, on behalf of the UK. And I think also he wants to get close to Farage. He's unlike other people, but the other parties don't say this publicly.
Unlikely alliance, Mandy and Nigel Farage.
He wants to do a deal, and he knows that the UK has got a big choice to make next year, Martin, between the European Union going closer to there, there's a big summit on the 3rd of February with all 27 leaders. There's the tete-a-tete with...
Mandy was a foaming at the mouth ultra-Remainer, it has to be said.
And so was Liz Truss.
Yeah.
I mean, people have moved on since then. Liz Truss was a Remainer. She became a Brexiteer. Why can't Peter Mandelson, although we haven't heard him yet talk up the benefits of Brexit like Liz Truss? But I think, in the ugly, you mentioned there, finally the ugly, there are questions he must answer about Jeffrey Epstein and his relationship and friendship with him, such as it was. I think he's going to be putting all of his money, his finances into a blind trust, as he should do. But other questions to answer, both for him and the Prime Minister.
OK, we'll stick with this, Chris. Excellent summary there of as ever, the annual controversial appointments. And let's speak further now with the former Labour advisor, Kevin Marr. Kevin, welcome to the show and a very Merry Christmas to you. Christmas came early, it seems, as well, for Sue Gray. Eyebrows have been raised already.
Well, there's 30 Labour peers that have been appointed. They're a mixture of the kind of apparatchik class Labour people. Deborah Mattinson, Keir Starmer's former Director of Strategy, was one of them. Angie Hunter, of course, used to do a similar role to Sue Gray for Tony Blair in the early days of the new Labour government. And a lot of people from trade union backgrounds, including a former General Secretary of the TUC and a Deputy General Secretary of the TUC. So these people are kind of familiar political operators. And any government appoints people to the Lords for two reasons. One is to balance or rebalance the number of peers in the House of Lords, and there is an imbalance. It doesn't reflect the kind of the sweep that Labour had in the July election. So there's a need to rebalance, but also it's a pool of potential ministers as well. A lot of these people are incredibly seasoned and effective. And it wouldn't surprise me if some of the people that are appointed today make their way onto into government roles, Minister of State, usually for technical issues, Minister for Housing, Minister for Transport, things like that. And it wouldn't surprise me in due course if that in fact was the career trajectory of Sue Gray. It wouldn't surprise me if she turned up as a Labour minister at some stage as well. So I think there's a purpose there for having her in the Lords, in that she's obviously a great operator in Whitehall, and I suspect that her skills will not be left to wither on the shelf.
Yeah, maybe you're right. They'll drape her in ermine, stick her in the corner for a few years, and who knows, she might return. Stranger things have happened. Talking of which, a hugely unlikely return, perhaps Peter Mandelson. Mandy, hove back into view, and even more unlikely, perhaps, he's saying here that Sir Keir Starmer should perhaps utilise Nigel Farage. Now, as political alliances go, that would be very, very unexpected. Metaphorically, of course, Peter Mandelson jumping into bed with Nigel Farage.
We're living in strange times. And Peter Mandelson's probably had more comebacks than Frank Sinatra. This will be the third Labour Prime Minister that he served. Obviously, cabinet minister, very much an acolyte of Tony Blair. Daggers drawn for lots and lots of years with Gordon Brown until Gordon Brown actually went to Mandelson and made friends again and brought him right back into the heart of government as the first Secretary of State and effectively Deputy Prime Minister for the last 18 months or so of Gordon Brown's tenure. So Mandelson is the great survivor of British politics, and that's partly because he is really good at the game of politics. And Chris was saying a minute ago that this is a really political appointment. The ambassador's role is usually reserved for kind of seasoned diplomats and ex-spooks and the like. But Keir Starmer is sending a very clear signal that he wants to be taken seriously by President Trump, that he's got his man leading the operation in Washington on behalf of Starmer. And I think Keir Starmer spies an early opportunity here as well to try and cement good relations with Donald Trump. I mean, there's nobody going to be running the ship in Germany. They've got a federal election that's coming up. So I think Keir Starmer will be pushing in the door very early and using Peter Mandelson to help him to do that. And of course, there's an awful lot riding on this relationship. The special relationship needs a lot of pump priming. And I think Keir Starmer's very aware of that. And we've got the prospect of a US trade deal, which is a really big ticket issue. And of course, Peter Mandelson used to be an EU trade commissioner. So, his skills will be useful there. But it's the big issue.
Is it worth, Kevin? Can I just interrupt your handsome flow there, so to speak, and ask you this question: is there anybody that's seen in the Labour Party that hasn't called Donald Trump some kind of fascist or white supremacist? It seems to be part of the job description now. You think Trump's a fascist? Great, you're hired. What are they playing at?
I think it is one of those tweet at leisure and then repent many years later. There have been an awful lot of disobliging remarks about Donald Trump, and I suspect
by the Labour Party.
There has, absolutely, and very unwise. And I think for practical frontline politicians to be putting the boot into Donald Trump, whether they like him or not, is an incredibly foolish thing to do and to have done. And there's a lot of people eating a lot of humble pie, given Donald Trump clearly has made the greatest political comeback of all time, and he's going to be there for the next 4 years. So I think Trump's got a thick skin. Trump's a deal maker. I don't think he'll care two hoots about what Peter Mandelson has said in the past. He will recognise that this is a very clear smoke signal by sending Mandelson there, that Britain, Keir Starmer, this government really want to work effectively with Donald Trump. I suspect we'll see an early state visit from Donald Trump as well. Keir Starmer will probably get an awful lot of flack from that from people who don't like Trump. But this is business, and Mandelson personifies politics as the art of making a deal and getting things done, and that's why he's been brought back and put in this role.
Like rising from the lake and jumping back to haunt us all. He's back. Mandelson on Frontline Politics. Kevin Marr, excellent as ever to have you on the show. Thank you very much, and have a very, very Merry Christmas to you, sir. Thank you. And thanks, of course, to you as well, Chris Hope.